For 10 long years, Grace and Daniel waited. Each day passed like a slow, heavy cloud. They prayed, they fasted, they visited doctors, they tried everything. But the one thing they desired most, a child, never came. Their house was quiet. The room they had prepared for a baby remained empty. Toys and baby clothes sat untouched. The crib stood as a reminder of dreams that never came true. At first, Daniel was hopeful. He told Grace, "Don't worry, God's time is the best." But as the years went by, his words became cold. He stopped smiling. He started spending more time outside the house, avoiding the painful silence that lived inside their home. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Grace finally gathered courage to speak. "Daniel," she said softly, looking into his tired eyes, "I have been thinking, maybe we should consider adoption." Daniel's jaw dropped and stared at her. "Adoption? Grace, what are you saying?" "We have waited for 10 years. Maybe this is how God wants to answer us. There are so many babies out there who need parents." "No," Daniel said firmly. "I don't want to raise someone else's child. Please, Daniel, just one baby. A little girl we can love as our own." For weeks, Grace kept begging. Each time, Daniel said no. But one day, after church, Daniel finally agreed, though unwillingly. "Fine," he said, "but only one baby. A girl. And that's it." Grace was overjoyed. She hugged him tightly. "Thank you, my love. You won't regret this." The next morning, they went to the orphanage. The place was filled with children's laughter and small cries. A kind woman named Sister Margaret welcomed them warmly. "Good morning," she said. "You must be Mr. and Mrs. Daniel." "Yes," Grace smiled. "We are here to adopt a baby girl." Sister Margaret nodded. "Please, come with me." As they walked through the orphanage, Grace noticed a group of 6 little girls sitting quietly in a corner. They were holding hands, their faces filled with sadness. They looked so fragile and scared. Sister Margaret stopped and lowered her voice. "These girls lost their parents in a plane crash just 1 month ago. They are sisters. The youngest 4 are quadruplets, and the other 2 are their elder sisters." Grace's heart broke. She couldn't take her eyes off them. The little girls looked at her with tearful eyes, as if begging silently for help. "Has anyone come for them?" Grace asked. "No," Sister Margaret sighed. "Everyone wants only one child. Nobody wants to take all 6. But I don't want to separate them. They have lost enough already." Grace's eyes filled with tears. She turned to Daniel and whispered, "We can't leave them like this. We have to take all 6. Daniel's face turned dark immediately. He pulled her to a corner, away from Sister Margaret. "Have you lost your mind?" he hissed. "6 children. Are you even hearing yourself? They are sisters, Daniel. If we separate them, it will break their hearts. They only have each other. Do you know how much it will cost to raise 6 children? School fees, food, clothing, hospital bills. It's not possible. Where do you expect us to get that kind of money?" Grace, wiping her tears, said with determination, "I will sell my land." Daniel's eyes widened. "The same land I begged you to sell years ago so I could start a business, and you refused. But now you want to sell it for these cursed children." "Please don't call them cursed, Daniel. They are innocent." Daniel's voice rose in anger. "I will not be part of this foolishness, Grace. Never. You want to throw away everything for strangers. You must be joking." He walked away from her angrily and left the orphanage, returning home alone. Grace stood there, her heart pounding. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She went back to Sister Margaret and said in a weak but firm voice, "Please don't give them to anyone else. I will be back tomorrow. They are my children now." Sister Margaret placed her hand gently on Grace's shoulder and nodded. "Take your time, my dear." As Grace walked out of the orphanage that evening, the sun was already setting. She whispered quietly to herself, "Tomorrow I will return for you, my children. No matter what it takes." That night, Grace sat on the edge of her bed, her eyes swollen from crying. Daniel was in the living room, watching television with a straight face, pretending nothing had happened. The air between them was heavy, filled with silence, pain, and confusion. Grace kept thinking about the 6 little girls. She saw their innocent faces over and over in her mind, their small hands holding each other tightly, their sad, scared eyes. She couldn't forget. Suddenly, Daniel entered the bedroom. "Grace," he said coldly, "I hope you have come back to your senses." Grace didn't answer. Daniel continued, "Listen to me. If you do this foolish thing, you will destroy this marriage. 6 children? We are not rich. You want to throw away your land for strangers." "They are not strangers, Daniel," Grace said softly. "They are children who have lost everything. They have no parents, no family. I have a chance to give them love. I can't walk away." Daniel shook his head. "You are being selfish. You only think with your emotions. This is not love. This is madness." Grace's voice broke. "For 10 years I prayed to hold a child. God did not answer the way we expected, but maybe this is his answer." Daniel clenched his fists. "Don't bring God into your foolishness. If you sell that land, don't expect me to support you." Grace looked into his angry eyes and said quietly, "Then I will do it alone." Daniel stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The next morning, Grace went to see Mr. Matthew, a family friend who had always admired her strength. "Grace, are you sure?" Matthew asked, surprised. "Yes," she said. "I want to sell the land. Please buy it. I need the money immediately." Matthew nodded. "You're a good woman, Grace. I will pay you tomorrow morning." "Thank you," she whispered. When Grace returned home, Daniel was waiting for her. "So you've made your choice," he said bitterly. "I have," she answered. "You are selling the land just to adopt those cursed children." "They are not cursed, Daniel. Stop saying that," she shouted, her tears falling again. "If you don't want to help, at least stop cursing them." Daniel stared at her for a moment, his face cold, then walked away. That night, Grace couldn't sleep again. But this time, her tears were mixed with hope. Tomorrow, she would bring her daughters home. Early the next morning, Matthew gave Grace the money. She thanked him with all her heart and rushed to the orphanage. Sister Margaret greeted her with a warm smile. "You came back." "Yes," Grace said, breathless with joy. "Please start the process." "I'm ready." The girls were called to the office. As they entered, they looked scared, holding hands tightly. When they saw Grace, one of the elder sisters whispered to the others, "It's her." She came back. Grace knelt and opened her arms wide. "Come, my daughters." The 6 girls ran into her arms, crying. Grace hugged them tightly, tears falling freely. "From today, you are mine. I promise to love you, care for you, and protect you." Sister Margaret wiped her eyes. "May God bless you, Grace. You have a mother's heart." The papers were signed. The girls were officially hers. Grace rented a small van to take them home. As they drove, the girls sang softly, their voices blending like little angels. Grace smiled, watching them from the front seat. For the first time in many years, her heart felt full. When they arrived home, Daniel was sitting outside, looking angry and shocked. "You brought them here," he shouted. "Yes," Grace answered. "They are my daughters now." Daniel laughed bitterly. "You're mad, Grace. This house is not big enough for this nonsense. Don't think I'll help you." Grace held her head high. "I never asked you to." The girls stood close to Grace, frightened by Daniel's shouting. Grace turned to them and whispered, "Don't be scared, my angels. You are safe." Days turned into weeks. Grace worked hard to care for her daughters. She woke up early to prepare their meals, helped them with schoolwork, and comforted them when they had bad dreams. Daniel stayed distant. He barely spoke to Grace or the children. He came home late, angry and bitter. The house was divided, but Grace didn't give up. Even though it was hard, Grace was happy. She finally had what she longed for, children who called her Mama. But everything was about to change again. 1 month after bringing the girls home, Daniel came home one evening looking pale and troubled. "What happened?" Grace asked softly. Daniel sat down heavily. "I lost my job." Grace's heart sank. She could see the fear in his eyes, but she tried to remain calm. "Don't worry, we will manage. God will provide." Daniel shook his head. "Manage? With 7 mouths to feed? This is a curse, Grace. I told you these children are cursed." "Please, Daniel, don't say that," Grace begged. "Don't blame innocent children for your troubles." But Daniel stood up, his voice rising. "I've had enough. I can't do this anymore." He grabbed his bag and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Grace held her head and wept. The children gathered around her, hugging her tightly. "Don't cry, Mama," one of the quadruplets whispered. "We love you." Through her tears, Grace smiled weakly and whispered, "I love you too, my angels. I will never leave you." After Daniel left, Grace knew her life would never be the same again. She was now fully responsible for 6 daughters, alone, no husband, no helper, just her faith, her love, and her courage. The money she got from selling her land was not much, but Grace was determined to use it wisely. She divided it carefully, counting every coin, planning for school fees, feeding, clothes, books, and little by little, she stretched every naira as far as she could. As the years passed, the girls grew quickly. They were bright, obedient, and hard-working. They loved their mother deeply and never wanted to disappoint her. They knew the sacrifice she had made for them. By the time they turned 18, Grace called them together for a serious talk. They all sat on the small wooden bench in front of the house, under the old mango tree. "My daughters," Grace began, "I have called you here because it's time to make a decision." The girls listened quietly. "The money I have left can only take 4 of you to the university," she continued. "The other 2 will stay back and help me on the farm so we can survive while your sisters study." The girls looked at one another. They didn't know what to say. "I wish I could send all of you to school," Grace said, her voice breaking, "but this is the best I can do now. If we work hard together, maybe later the others can go too." The 2 eldest, Mary and Sarah, stood up and said together, "Mama, let us stay and work with you. The younger ones should go to school first." Grace looked at them with tears in her eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes, Mama," Mary said with a gentle smile. "You have done enough for us. Let our sisters go first." The younger 4 girls burst into tears and hugged their elder sisters tightly. They didn't want to leave them behind, but they also knew it was the best choice. Grace hugged them all. "My beautiful daughters, God will reward your kindness. One day, all of you will shine." With the little money left, Grace was able to register the 4 younger girls into the university. It was not a big or famous school, but it was enough for them to chase their dreams. Back at home, Mary and Sarah woke up every morning before sunrise to work with Grace on the farm. They planted corn, yams, cassava, and vegetables. They sold the harvest in the local market. Every kobo they earned was carefully saved. Grace was no longer as strong as she used to be. The years of sacrifice had started to show on her face and body, but she never complained. The smiles of her daughters gave her strength. Sometimes at night, after a long day at the farm, Grace would sit under the moonlight with Mary and Sarah. They would talk, laugh, and dream about the future. "Mama," Sarah would say, "one day this farm will become a big business." "Yes, my child," Grace would reply, smiling. "With God, all things are possible." The 4 younger girls worked hard in school. They studied day and night, determined not to waste the opportunity their mother and sisters had given them. They lived a simple life at the university, sharing a small room, cooking their own food, and supporting each other. Every holiday, they would return home to help on the farm and spend time with their mother and elder sisters. The bond between them grew even stronger with each passing year. For years, Grace thought she had seen the worst of life. She had sacrificed everything for her daughters, and even though it was tough, they had survived with love and unity. But what she didn't know was that life was preparing another test for her faith and patience. One hot afternoon, Daniel suddenly returned. He drove into the compound with a strange look on his face, his eyes filled with pride and anger. Grace was sitting under the tree, peeling cassava with Mary and Sarah when they saw him step out of the car. At first, Grace thought maybe he came to visit or even to make peace. But his words cut through her heart like a sharp knife. "I have come to take back my house," Daniel said coldly. Grace stood up slowly, confused. "What do you mean, Daniel?" "This house belongs to me," he said firmly. "I left it for you all these years because I pitied you. But not anymore." Grace was trembling. "Daniel, this house was built by both of us when we were still together. I raised our daughters here. I have nowhere else to go." Daniel laughed wickedly. "Those are not my daughters. They are cursed girls you adopted against my will. I have no part in them. I don't want graves living in my house." "Daniel, please," Grace begged, her voice shaking. "Don't do this. You left us. We have suffered enough." "That's your problem, not mine," Daniel replied heartlessly. "You chose those cursed children over me. Now pack your things and leave my house before I call the police." Mary and Sarah stood behind their mother, holding her hands tightly, tears rolling down their cheeks. "Please, sir, don't send us away," Mary pleaded. But Daniel ignored them. With no one to defend them, Grace had no choice but to leave. She packed what little they had and carried her daughters out of the house they had called home for so many years. With nowhere to go, Grace and the two girls found an abandoned, incomplete building at the edge of the village. The walls had no windows, the floor was bare, and there was no roof in some parts. At night, they could hear the howling wind, and sometimes wild dogs came close. But it was the only place they could stay. Still, Grace never allowed her daughters to lose hope. Every night, they knelt and prayed together. "My daughters," she would say, "this is not the end. God will turn our shame into glory." But even in their suffering, people still came to mock them. One afternoon, as Grace was cooking outside with firewood, an old friend, Felicia, came visiting. She stood, looking around with disgust written all over her face. "Grace, look at you," Felicia said, folding her arms, "living like a beggar with these cursed girls. I warned you years ago, but you refused to listen." Grace kept quiet, stirring the pot slowly, but her heart was heavy. Felicia continued, "You have suffered enough for them. Why are you still punishing yourself? You could come stay in my house. I have a spare room. You don't have to suffer like this." Grace looked up slowly. "Thank you, Felicia, but we are fine." "Fine?" Felicia laughed mockingly. "In this broken house, where rain and cold beat you every day? Grace, you are too stubborn. How are you even sure these girls will remember you when they finally make it? That's if they ever make it." "They will make it, Felicia," Grace said firmly. Felicia shook her head. "Don't fool yourself, Grace. They are females. Who knows if they will get pregnant before even finishing school? Girls of nowadays cannot control themselves." "Enough!" Grace suddenly shouted. Her voice was strong and sharp. "Felicia, don't you ever open your mouth and speak evil about my daughters again. I would rather sleep under the rain with my children than enter your house filled with curses and wickedness." Felicia laughed again. "I was only trying to help." "Your kind of help is poison. Keep your foolish help to yourself," Grace snapped. "We don't need it here." Felicia's eyes turned red with anger. "You are so ignorant, Grace, foolish and stubborn. That is why God punished you and refused to give you your own children." The words pierced Grace's heart deeply, but she stood strong. She pointed her finger at Felicia. "God gave me more than children. He gave me these daughters. I love them and they love me. And mark my words, Felicia, the same God you are mocking will raise them higher than you can ever imagine." Felicia clapped her hands mockingly. "Keep dreaming, Grace. I pity you." Grace looked at her with fire in her eyes and said calmly, "Don't ever come near me or my daughters again. Never." Without another word, Felicia turned and walked away, her face filled with pride. Grace sat back down, breathing heavily. Her daughters came and wrapped their arms around her. "Mama, we are sorry," Sarah whispered. "Because of us, you are suffering." Grace smiled through her tears. "No, my angels, you are my greatest blessings. Don't ever say that again. The storm may be strong now, but the sun will shine again." That night, as the cold wind blew through the incomplete building, Grace laid on the mat with her daughters beside her. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Lord, you see everything. Please don't forget us." And heaven was listening. Finally, after many years of hard work, the four daughters graduated. On the day of their graduation, Grace could not hold back her tears as she watched them wearing their graduation gowns. As the last daughter walked up to collect her certificate, the announcer called her name loudly, "Miss Anita Johnson, first-class honors." The crowd cheered. Grace cried with joy as she whispered, "Thank you, Lord. You never forgot us." After the graduation, the girls rushed to their mother, surrounding her with hugs. "We did it, Mama," they all said in unison, tears running down their cheeks. After graduation, the four girls went into the world to find jobs. At first, it wasn't easy. They faced rejection after rejection. "Who are your parents?" some would ask. "What experience do you have?" others would say. But they never gave up. They were their mother's daughters. They carried her strength inside them. One day, everything changed. Anita, the youngest of the four, got an interview at a big multinational company. She was nervous, but she remembered her mother's words. "Walk with your head high, my daughter." You are the child of a queen." When Anita walked into the interview room, the CEO himself was sitting there. After reading her CV, he looked at her and said, "Your results are excellent. But what is your life story? I like to know who I am employing." With tears in her eyes, Anita told him everything. About her mother's sacrifice, about living in an incomplete building, about working on the farm while schooling, and how her mother never gave up on them. The CEO was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. "You remind me of my own mother," he said. "She was also a strong woman who raised me alone. You're hired." Anita burst into tears. "Thank you, sir." But that was not all. The CEO continued, "I need people like you in this company, hard-working, loyal, brave. If you have sisters who are also as hard-working as you, tell them to apply too." Within weeks, all 4 daughters got jobs in good companies. Their salaries were not small. For the first time in their lives, they had enough money to plan for their mother's comfort. One Saturday evening, they all gathered in their small room in the incomplete building with their mother and elder sisters, Mary and Sarah. "Mama," Anita started, holding her mother's hand, "we have a surprise for you." Grace smiled, thinking it was something small. "You girls always have surprises." "No, Mama, this is different," said Rebecca, the eldest of the 4. Then Sarah and Mary brought out a set of documents. Sarah opened them and handed them to Grace. Grace looked at the papers, confused. "Apartment rent, fully paid for 1 year, and it's a 3-bedroom flat." "Yes, Mama," Mary smiled, tears in her eyes. "We have rented a big, beautiful apartment for you and for us. No more incomplete building, Mama. You deserve to live like a queen." Grace's mouth opened in shock. She covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. She could not speak. She looked at her daughters, one after another, unable to believe what she was hearing. "My daughters," she whispered, her voice shaking, "you have done this for me?" "Yes, Mama," they all said together. "You sacrificed everything for us. Now it's time for us to take care of you." Grace dropped the documents and broke into tears. She hugged them tightly as they all wept together, their tears falling freely like rain from heaven. After some minutes of weeping, Grace raised her head and said, "You girls have restored my dignity. May God bless you. May God lift you higher than you can ever imagine." "Amen," they all replied loudly. The next day, they packed their few belongings and moved into their new apartment. As she entered the apartment for the first time, Grace stopped at the door, knelt down and said, "Lord, this is your doing. Thank you for remembering me." Mary and Sarah also got registered into school with the help of their younger sisters. They had waited for years, but finally they too were now starting their own education. "Mama," Mary said one night, "now it's our turn. We will study hard, just like our sisters, and make you even prouder." Grace held both of their hands. "My daughters, my heart is full. I am the happiest mother on earth." But the news of their success began to spread in the village. Many people who once mocked Grace started praising her. Some even said behind her back, "We never thought those cursed girls would make it." One afternoon, as Grace was coming back from the market, she met Felicia, the same friend who had once mocked and insulted her years ago. Felicia stood with her mouth open, surprised to see Grace wearing beautiful clothes, carrying bags of groceries, and smiling like a true queen. "Grace, is this you?" Felicia said, trying to force a smile. Grace looked at her calmly. "Yes, Felicia, it's me. I heard your daughters are now working in big companies. I even heard they rented a big house for you." God is wonderful," Grace smiled. "Yes, Felicia, God is indeed wonderful." Felicia tried to act friendly. "I was just about to visit you. We should talk and catch up." Grace shook her head gently. "No, Felicia, there's nothing to talk about. You chose your path and I chose mine. May God give you peace." Without waiting for another word, Grace walked away, her head high, her heart full of peace. Life was finally shining bright for Grace and her daughters. But sometimes, just when it seems peace has come to stay, the enemy comes knocking again. Daniel, who had once chased Grace out of his house and called her children cursed, had become completely broke. The business he started after he left Grace failed terribly. His new woman left him the moment the money finished. Friends abandoned him too. He was now a lonely, bitter, and poor man. One evening at a local bar, Daniel overheard some men talking about Grace's daughters. "Have you heard? Those girls their mother adopted are now working in big companies. Big salaries, big house, fine cars." Daniel's ears stood sharp. "Which girls?" he asked. "The ones Grace adopted after he left her," one man said. "Now they are rich. I heard one of them even works with a foreign company." Daniel's eyes turned red with jealousy. He could not believe his ears. All these years, he was suffering while Grace and the same girls he called cursed were now successful. That night, Daniel could not sleep. Evil thoughts filled his heart. "I must find my way back into that house. After all, I am still Grace's husband. She cannot enjoy while I suffer." The next morning, Daniel managed to get Grace's phone number from one of her old neighbors and called her. Grace was resting in her apartment when her phone rang. She saw the caller ID and froze for a moment. It was Daniel. She picked the call slowly. "Hello? Grace?" Daniel's voice came, soft and humble. "It's me, Daniel." Grace was silent for a few seconds, then said coldly, "What do you want, Daniel?" "Grace, my dear, I have come to realize my mistakes. Please forgive me. I was foolish. You were right all along. Can we please be a family again? I am suffering. Please let us start afresh." Grace's chest boiled with anger. The same man who cursed her children now wanted to come back because they were successful. She took a deep breath and said firmly, "Daniel, you left us when we needed you most. You called my daughters cursed. You threw us into the streets. Now that they are successful, you want to come back. You are a shameless man." "Grace, please, don't ever call my phone again," she snapped. "Go back to where you came from." Before Daniel could say another word, Grace cut the call and blocked his number. Daniel was furious at her rejection. His eyes burned with hatred. "You will regret this, Grace," he shouted into the empty room. Blinded by anger, Daniel visited a native doctor. The old man sat in front of a burning pot of herbs and asked, "What do you want me to do for you?" "I want you to make those girls hate their mother. Make them turn against her and bring me back into the house." The native doctor smiled wickedly. "It will cost you." Daniel sold his last valuables to pay. The native doctor performed all kinds of rituals. He called spirits, poured blood on idols, and made incantations. But nothing worked. The girls continued to love their mother, and Daniel became more frustrated. When his plans failed, Daniel moved to a more dangerous path. Through a bad friend, he found criminals who specialized in blackmail. They managed to hack into the companies where Grace's daughters worked and leaked false information that led to the 4 girls losing their jobs. Anonymous phone calls were made to their managers, spreading lies about the girls stealing money and breaking company rules. Within 1 week, all 4 girls were jobless. Confused, the sisters sat together one night, trying to understand what was happening. That's when the anonymous caller struck again. The phone rang. One of the sisters picked it up. "Hello?" A strange voice said, "The problem in your life is your mother. She is a witch. She cursed you because you refused to buy her a house. She wanted you to suffer." The call ended immediately. The sisters sat quietly, looking at each other. Tears rolled down Anita's face. "Could it be true?" she whispered. "Mama used to cry to God that we will build her a house someday." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Maybe she got angry and cursed us." "Look at us now, jobless and broke," another said. Slowly, bitterness entered their hearts. One evening while Grace was preparing dinner, the 4 sisters returned home. But this time they didn't come with smiles. Their faces were hard, cold, and full of anger. "Mama, we need to talk," Anita said sharply. Grace turned, surprised at their tone. "My daughters, what is it?" "Stop calling us your daughters," Rebecca shouted. "You are a witch. You cursed us because we didn't build you a house." Grace dropped the spoon she was holding, shaking her head. "What? My daughters, how can you say this? Don't pretend," Anita screamed. "Ever since we started making money, you have been jealous. You destroyed our jobs because you want us to suffer and keep serving you." "God forbid," Grace cried out. "I never cursed any of you. I prayed for you day and night." "Enough," they all shouted. "We don't want to see you here again. Get out of this house now." Tears poured down Grace's face. She knelt on the ground. "My daughters, please listen. I am your mother. I love you." But they didn't listen. Anita opened the door and pointed outside. Leave now before we call the police." With a broken heart, Grace picked her small bag and walked out of the house where she once found joy. Outside, she sat under a small shed, weeping like a child. Grace had no idea where to go. As she sat at a small local restaurant late that evening, she picked up her phone and called Mary and Sarah, who were still in school. When the elder sisters heard what happened, they were furious. "How could they do this to you, Mama?" Mary cried on the phone. "We are coming right now." Within hours, the two elder sisters arrived at the restaurant, hugging their mother tightly. "Mama, don't cry," Sarah said. "You are our mother. You raised us with your tears and blood. We will never abandon you." "But they are the ones paying your school fees and bills," Grace whispered, weeping. "If you defend me, you will lose everything." Mary shook her head strongly. "We don't care. We will never choose money over you." The next morning, Mary and Sarah went to visit their younger sisters. They knocked on the door. When the four opened, they stared at each other silently. "We came to talk," Sarah started softly. "There's nothing to talk about," Rebecca said coldly. "You threw Mama out like a dog after everything she did for us. How could you?" Mary said, her voice shaking with anger. "She cursed us," Anita shouted. "We lost our jobs because of her. If you are not on our side, forget your school fees." Sarah stood tall. "Then so be it. If protecting our mother means we lose everything, we accept." The four sisters laughed mockingly. "You both are fools. Go and suffer with your dear mother." Without another word, Mary and Sarah left the house. With the little money they had, Mary and Sarah rented a tiny one-room apartment. They moved in with Grace. Though life became hard again, their hearts were at peace. Every morning, the three of them woke up and returned to their farm work. They planted and harvested just like old times. One evening, as they sat outside eating roasted corn, Sarah held her mother's hand and said, "Mama, don't worry. We will make it one day. The same God who helped us before will help us again." Grace smiled with tears. "As long as I have you two, I am rich." Meanwhile, the four younger sisters who chased Grace out were struggling more than ever. After losing their jobs, they started looking for work again. But everywhere they went, doors closed against them. The companies they applied to had heard of their previous job loss and refused to hire them. Soon their savings began to finish. The big house rent became hard to pay. Friends who once admired them started avoiding their calls. As life got harder, they began to argue with one another. "You see where your foolish anger has brought us," Anita shouted at Rebecca one night. "Don't shout at me," Rebecca fired back. "You were the one that listened to that stupid anonymous caller first." "We all agreed to chase Mama away," the third sister screamed. "We are finished because of our foolishness," the fourth sister cried. The house that once had laughter was now filled with bitterness and shame. They sat together one night, broke, hungry, and completely hopeless. "What are we going to do now?" one asked. Nobody had an answer. While they suffered in silence, God was preparing something special for Grace and her two faithful daughters. One day, as Grace and her daughters were working on their farm, a large black car suddenly stopped by the roadside. A well-dressed elderly man stepped out with two young men beside him. They walked toward Grace. "Good afternoon, Ma," the man greeted warmly. "Good afternoon, sir," Grace responded, wiping sweat from her face. The man smiled. "Are you Madam Grace?" "Yes, sir." "I have been searching for you for some time. May I speak with you privately?" Grace looked at her daughters, confused but curious. She nodded and stepped aside. The man introduced himself as Mr. Thompson, the CEO of a large agricultural company. He continued, "Some years ago, one of my junior staff at the university told me the story of a woman who adopted 6 orphan girls and raised them alone. That story touched me deeply. Since then, I've always wanted to meet you." Grace was speechless. He continued, "Recently, your daughter Anita applied for a job in my company. Though her file was rejected due to her previous records, her story came back to me. After deep investigation, I discovered what really happened. That you were falsely accused. Someone wanted to destroy you and your daughters." Grace's eyes filled with tears as she listened. "My company believes in second chances, especially for good people. I have come today to offer all 6 of your daughters jobs. Not just any jobs, but positions that will change their lives." Grace covered her mouth in shock. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Mr. Thompson smiled, "because you deserve it. You raised 6 daughters with love, and you never gave up. I want to help rewrite your family's story." Grace dropped to her knees and cried, "Thank you, sir." "May God bless you." 2 weeks later, Mr. Thompson personally invited all 6 daughters to his office. When Anita, Rebecca, and the other 2 heard about the offer, they could not believe their ears. They came with their heads bowed in shame, afraid to face their mother again. They were too ashamed to even look into Grace's eyes. "Mama," Anita started, breaking into tears, "we don't deserve your forgiveness." Rebecca knelt beside her. "We were foolish. We allowed anger and lies to blind us. We chased you away like a stranger. Please forgive us." The other 2 joined them, crying bitterly. Grace stood quietly, tears rolling down her cheeks. She looked at her 2 elder daughters beside her, then looked at the 4 kneeling girls. "My children," Grace whispered, "I carried all of you in my heart even before you called me Mama. I loved you when you had nothing. How can I stop loving you because of mistakes?" She knelt down and embraced them all tightly. They wept together, shaking. "Mama, we promise never to hurt you again," Anita cried. "I forgive you," Grace said softly. "Let us leave the past behind. God has given us a new beginning." The following week, all 6 daughters resumed work at the agricultural company. Mr. Thompson placed each of them in good-paying positions according to their degrees and talents. The joy in the family returned. For the first time in many years, all the daughters were back under one roof, united with their mother, living as one happy family again. With their first salary, they surprised Grace with another gift, a brand new house, fully furnished and located in one of the finest areas in town. When Grace saw the house, she burst into uncontrollable tears. From living in an incomplete building to this mansion. "Lord, who am I that you are so mindful of me?" she whispered in prayer. Mary and Sarah also continued their studies while working part-time in the same company, sponsored fully by Mr. Thompson. But while peace had found Grace's house, evil was still burning in Daniel's heart. When Daniel heard that Grace and her daughters were not only back together, but now living happily in a new house with great jobs, his anger boiled like fire. "What kind of woman is this?" Daniel shouted in his empty room. "After everything I did, she still rose again?" He paced up and down like a madman. "No, I will not allow this. I must finish what I started." Without thinking, Daniel decided to return to the native doctor, hoping to try stronger charms to destroy Grace and her daughters completely. "I will teach them a lesson this time," he said angrily. That evening, Daniel left his house and started walking to the native doctor's shrine. As he approached the main road, it was already dark. Daniel, filled with anger and not paying attention, stepped onto the busy road, trying to cross quickly. Suddenly, a loud noise filled the air. A speeding car came from nowhere. The driver was drunk and had lost control of the steering. In a flash, the car hit Daniel with full force. His body was thrown into the air like a rag doll and landed heavily on the roadside. By the time people gathered, Daniel was already dead. The driver was arrested, but Daniel's life had ended instantly, without mercy. When the news reached Grace and her daughters, there was complete silence in the house. "Mama," Sarah whispered, "they said Daniel is dead. He was hit by a car last night." Grace sat quietly, looking into the air. After a long pause, she spoke softly. "Vengeance belongs to God. I have no joy in anyone's death, but he brought this upon himself." Her daughters nodded. None of them felt pity. The man who once called them cursed, who tried to destroy their mother and tear their family apart, had reaped the fruit of his wickedness. They simply prayed, "Lord, may your will be done." Years passed peacefully after Daniel's death. Grace's daughters continued to grow in their careers. Each of them succeeded greatly in their different fields. Some became managers, others business owners, and some even traveled abroad for international projects. But no matter how far they went, they always returned home to their mother. They never forgot her sacrifices. One by one, the daughters found love and got married to good men who respected and loved their mother like their own. The weddings were grand, filled with joy and beautiful tears. Grace, dressed in elegant clothes, sat with pride at each wedding, watching her daughters walk down the aisle. At every wedding, guests would whisper, "Is this not the same woman who was once homeless?" Look at what God has done for her." Grace would simply smile, tears filling her eyes, and say, "Indeed, God is faithful." In her old age, Grace lived peacefully in her beautiful home. She was surrounded by grandchildren who filled the house with laughter once again. Every evening, as the sun set, she would sit on her balcony, watching the children play while her daughters and their husbands gathered around her. "My children," she would say often, "never forget that love and forgiveness will always win. And never forget what God has done for us." Her daughters always replied, "Yes, Mama, your story will be told for generations." And truly, Grace's story became a lesson not only for her family, but for the whole town. A story of love, sacrifice, patience, betrayal, and finally victory. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.